Welcome to GhostMire, where every night a new horror story drags you deeper than the last. Before anything else, hit subscribe right now. If you miss even one night, you'll miss the piece that connects all these stories into something far darker. Comment below where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know exactly who's awake inside the dark with us. And listen carefully. This story has something hidden. A moment so disturbing, so unexpected that most people don't recognize it until the very end. If you leave early, you'll never know what really happened. So stay with me, all the way to the final second. Story first. The Mirror Convoy. Jake Morrison had been hauling freight across I-80 for 17 years, and he thought he'd seen everything the road could throw at him. That changed on a February night in 2019. Somewhere between Laramie and Rawlins, Wyoming. The temperature had dropped to -15, and the highway stretched empty in both directions, just Jake and his freightliner pushing through the darkness. Around 2:47 a.m., he noticed headlights in his passenger mirror. Another rig, running the same speed, keeping perfect pace about 50 yards back. Jake didn't think much of it initially. Truckers often formed informal convoys on lonely stretches, the presence of another driver providing psychological comfort through the dead hours. But something felt wrong. The truck behind him maintained an unnaturally precise distance, never varying by even a few feet despite the curves and grade changes. Jake adjusted his speed, accelerating to 75, then dropping to 60. The headlights matched him perfectly, as if tethered by an invisible rope. He grabbed his CB radio. "Hey there, driver behind me on eastbound 80, you got your ears on?" Static. He tried again. "Breaker, breaker, this is Big Jake running solo. You following me, come back?" Nothing but the hiss of dead air. Jake's gut tightened. He'd been driving long enough to trust his instincts, and they were screaming now. He stared into the passenger mirror, trying to make out details of the truck behind him. The headlights were modern LEDs, bright white, but he couldn't distinguish the make or model. The cab seemed to shimmer slightly, as if viewed through heat waves, which made no sense in sub-zero temperatures. Mile marker 235 passed, then 236. The phantom truck never wavered. Jake decided to test something. He flipped off his running lights, leaving only his headlights active. In his mirror, the truck behind him went completely dark simultaneously, matching his configuration exactly. When he turned his running lights back on 3 seconds later, the following truck's lights returned in perfect synchronization. His mouth went dry. He fumbled for his phone, thinking he'd called dispatch, maybe even the highway patrol. No signal. The phone showed full bars but wouldn't complete any calls. The CB remained silent except for static. Jake was completely isolated with whatever was following him. At mile marker 240, Jake made a decision. A rest area was coming up in 2 miles. He'd pull in, let this thing pass, see what it really was. His hands gripped the wheel tighter as the rest area sign approached. He hit his turn signal and began to decelerate. In the mirror, the following truck's turn signal activated at the exact same instant. It began to slow at precisely the same rate. "No," Jake whispered. "No, no, no." He canceled the turn, accelerating back onto the highway. The truck behind him did the same, the turn signals blinking off in unison. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. He was sweating despite the cold. Whatever was back there, it wasn't just following him, it was mirroring him. He tried everything. Sudden lane changes, unpredictable speed variations, flashing his lights in random patterns. Every action was replicated perfectly by the truck in his mirror, always maintaining that exact 50-yard gap. The precision was inhuman, impossible. Then Jake noticed something that made his blood freeze. In the reflection, he could see his own trailer. And on his trailer in the mirror, he could read his company's name, Morrison Freight, except the letters were backward, mirror reversed. That should have been impossible. Mirrors don't work that way. He was looking at the truck behind him, but somehow seeing a reflection of himself. At mile marker 251, Jake's CB suddenly crackled to life. His own voice came through the speaker. "Hey there, driver behind me on eastbound 80, you got your ears on?" It was his exact words from 20 minutes earlier, played back with perfect clarity. The temperature inside the cab plummeted. Jake's breath came out in thick clouds. Frost spread across the inside of his windshield in intricate patterns. The engine temperature gauge began to drop, which defied all mechanical logic. The heater blasted cold air. In his mirror, the following truck began to close the distance. 40 yards, 30, 20. Jake pressed the accelerator to the floor, but the speedometer wouldn't climb past 70. The phantom truck kept coming, and now Jake could see more details. The cab was identical to his own Freightliner, the same color, the same configuration. The trailer had Morrison Freight printed on the side. He was being pursued by himself. At 15 yards, Jake could see the driver. Same build, same company cap, same face. The other Jake stared back at him with hollow eyes, mouth open in a silent scream. 10 yards, 5. Jake closed his eyes, expecting collision. His radio erupted with overlapping voices. All his own voice. Dozens of Jakes calling out on CB, creating a horrible cacophony of desperate pleas and warnings. Then silence. Complete and absolute. Jake opened his eyes. The highway stretched empty behind him. No headlights, no phantom truck. His temperature gauges returned to normal. His phone showed signal again. He pulled into the first truck stop he found, shaking so badly he could barely walk. Another driver noticed his condition, asked if he was okay. Jake tried to explain, but the words sounded insane even to his own ears. He never drove that stretch of I-80 at night again. And sometimes, when he stopped at a traffic light or a way station, he avoids looking in his mirrors too long. Because occasionally, just for a second, he sees his truck behind him, maintaining that perfect 50-yard distance, and wonders which Jake is the real one. Story second, the fuel station that shouldn't exist. Marcus Chen had been driving for Cisco Foods for 9 years, making the same run from Sacramento to Boise 3 times a week. He knew every truck stop, every rest area, every fuel station along Highway 80 and 95, which is why he couldn't explain the station he found on a November night in 2021. His fuel gauge had dropped to a quarter tank somewhere south of Winnemucca, Nevada. Marcus had miscalculated, pushed too far without refueling. The nearest station he knew was 30 miles ahead, too risky. He was scanning the darkness, debating whether to call dispatch for emergency assistance, when he saw it, a bright oasis of lights just off the highway. A fuel station he'd never noticed before. The sign read Crossroads Fuel and Rest in cheerful neon letters. The lot was well lit, the pumps modern, everything clean and inviting. Odd, Marcus thought, that he'd never seen this place, despite making this run for nearly a decade. But fuel was fuel. He pulled in, the only vehicle in the lot. The station had 4 diesel pumps, all functional according to the digital displays. A small convenience store sat adjacent, windows glowing warmly. Everything looked normal except for one thing. There was absolutely no sound. No highway noise despite being 50 yards from I-95. No wind. Nothing. Marcus stepped out of his cab, and the silence pressed against him like a physical weight. He walked to the nearest pump, trying to shake off the unease. The pump accepted his fuel card without issue, and he began filling his tank. That's when he noticed the prices. Diesel was listed at $1.87 per gallon. Marcus stared at the number. Fuel hadn't been that cheap in over 15 years. He checked the date on the pump's display, November 14, 2021. That was correct. today's date. But the price made no sense. The gallons ticked upward. 20 gallons, 40, 60. Marcus watched the numbers climb, but something felt wrong about the flow. He looked at his tank gauge through the driver's window, still reading a quarter full. He'd pumped 60 gallons into a tank that should be nearly full by now, yet the gauge hadn't moved. 70 gallons, 80. The pump kept running. Marcus squeezed the handle trigger to stop it, but nothing happened. The mechanism was locked open, fuel pouring endlessly into his tank. 90 gallons, 100. This was impossible. His tank capacity was 150 gallons, and it had started at about 40 remaining. He tried to pull the nozzle out. It wouldn't budge, as if welded to his fuel port. 120 gallons, 140. Marcus's panic spiked. If this thing didn't stop, if fuel started overflowing, the whole truck could ignite. 160 gallons. The gauge in his cab still showed a quarter tank. Marcus ran toward the convenience store, intending to get help, to find an emergency shutoff. The door opened easily, triggering a small bell chime that sounded too loud in the oppressive silence. The store was pristine, fully stocked with snacks and drinks from brands Marcus recognized. But everything had a strange quality, like a photograph that was almost but not quite in focus. He couldn't find any price tags. Behind the counter, a woman stood with her back to him, arranging cigarette displays. "Excuse me," Marcus called. "The pump outside won't stop. I need help." The woman didn't turn around. She continued her work, movements slow and deliberate. Marcus approached the counter. "Ma'am, I need help with pump 3. Still no response. He was about to reach out and tap her shoulder when she spoke, voice flat and mechanical. "Your fuel will stop when you're full." "I'm already full. The pump says I've taken almost 200 gallons. My tank can't hold." "Your fuel will stop when you're full," she repeated, exact same inflection, like a recording. Marcus backed away. He noticed other details now. The calendar behind the counter showed November 2006. The newspaper rack displayed papers from 2006. Everything in the store, the candy bars, the chip bags, the drink bottles, all had packaging designs from 15 years ago. He bolted for the door. Outside, the pump display showed 230 gallons. His truck sat unchanged, no fuel spilling, no overflow. Marcus grabbed the nozzle again, yanked with all his strength. This time it came free easily, too easily, and he stumbled backward. The pump display went dark. All the lights in the station flickered once, twice, then steadied. Marcus looked at his fuel gauge. Full, completely full. As if he'd pumped exactly the right amount. But the pump's final reading glowed briefly before going black. 287 gallons. Marcus's hands shook as he climbed back into his cab. He started the engine, desperate to leave. As he pulled out of the lot, he checked his mirrors. The crossroads fuel and rest was gone. The space where it had stood was empty desert. No trace of buildings or pumps or lights. Just darkness and scrub brush. He drove for the next 40 miles in a daze. When he finally stopped at his regular fuel station outside Boise, he checked his tank. Full, as the gauge indicated. The station attendant commented that Marcus looked pale, asked if he was feeling all right. "Can you check my fuel log?" Marcus asked. The attendant scanned his fleet card. The last fuel purchase showed Sacramento, 3 days earlier. No record of any transaction in Nevada. No charge for 287 gallons at $1.87 per gallon. Nothing. Marcus made a note of the mile marker where he'd seen the station. On his return trip 2 days later, he slowed down, looking carefully. There was nothing. No turnoff, no abandoned buildings, no sign of any structure. Just empty desert. But his truck ran differently after that night. The fuel economy was impossible. He could drive for weeks without refilling. The gauge would drop normally, then mysteriously reset to full overnight. Mechanics found nothing wrong. The tank wasn't leaking. The gauge wasn't malfunctioning. The fuel just appeared. Marcus reported the issue to his company. They had no explanation. Eventually, they stopped asking questions when they realized how much money they were saving. Marcus kept driving, kept making his runs, kept seeing his fuel gauge refill itself from an invisible source. He never found the crossroads fuel and rest again. But sometimes, late at night on empty stretches of highway, he wonders what he actually filled his tank with. And he thinks about the woman in the store, still arranging her cigarettes in that frozen moment of 2006, still repeating her mechanical phrase to confuse drivers who stumble into a place that exists nowhere and everywhere along the dark roads of Nevada. Story third, the passenger who wasn't there. Leon Waters had a strict rule: never pick up hitchhikers. In 23 years of hauling freight, he'd seen enough horror stories to know better. But on a rain-soaked April night in 2020, somewhere on Route 50 in Kansas, his resolution broke against basic human decency. The woman stood at the edge of the highway, illuminated by his headlights. She wore a simple blue dress, soaked through, no jacket despite the 40-degree temperature. She wasn't thumbing for a ride, just standing there in the pouring rain, staring at nothing. Leon passed her, then cursed and pulled onto the shoulder. He grabbed an emergency blanket from his cab and jogged back. Up close, she was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair plastered to her face. Her skin was pale, lips almost blue from cold. She didn't acknowledge his presence until he draped the blanket over her shoulders. "Ma'am, you okay? You need help?" His voice barely carried over the hammering rain. She turned slowly, focusing on him with dark eyes that seemed older than her face. "I need to get to Dodge City." Her voice was calm, conversational, as if they were meeting at a coffee shop instead of a deserted highway in a thunderstorm. "I'm headed that direction," Leon said. "Come on, you'll freeze out here." She followed him to the truck without another word. Once inside, Leon cranked the heat and handed her a towel from his overnight bag. She dabbed at her face but made no real effort to dry off. Water dripped from her dress onto the seat. "I'm Leon. What's your name?" "Sarah." She stared straight ahead through the windshield. "I appreciate the ride." Leon pulled back onto Route 50. "What were you doing out there? Car breakdown? Something like that?" Her tone discouraged further questions. Leon focused on driving, though he kept glancing at her. She hadn't shivered once despite being soaked to the bone, didn't ask about the heat or comment on the weather, just sat there, perfectly still, water pooling at her feet. After 20 minutes of silence, Sarah spoke. "Do you believe in mistakes, Leon? Mistakes? Choices that break everything. Moments you can't undo." She turned to look at him, and Leon felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Her eyes were completely black. No iris, no white, just solid black from edge to edge. He nearly swerved off the road. "Your eyes? What about them?" She blinked, and they were normal again. Brown, ordinary, human. "Nothing," Leon muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. He told himself it was a trick of the dashboard lights, shadows playing across her face. "I made a mistake," Sarah continued, "on a night like this. April 15th, 2015. 5 years ago exactly. Do you know what happens to people who make irreversible mistakes, Leon? Look, if you're in some kind of trouble, they get stuck, looped, repeating the same moment, trying to fix what can't be fixed." Her voice remained eerily calm. "I was driving to Dodge City. My boyfriend was waiting. We were going to run away together, start over. But I was going too fast in the rain. There was a truck, A big rig like yours. I didn't see it until too late. Leon's hands felt numb on the wheel. Sarah, maybe you should rest. You've been through something traumatic. I crossed the center line, she said. Hit the truck head on. Killed myself instantly. The truck driver survived. Took him months to recover. He quit driving after that. Had nightmares about the girl in the blue dress who appeared out of nowhere. That's not funny. Leon's voice came out hoarse. Sarah turned fully toward him, and Leon saw that she was completely dry now. The water that had been dripping from her hair and dress was gone. Her clothes looked pristine, pressed, perfect. Every year, on April 15th, I'm back on this highway, trying to make it to Dodge City, trying to reach him, but I never arrive. Because I died at mile marker 347, and that's where the loop resets. Leon checked his odometer against the last mile marker he'd passed. They were approaching mile marker 345. He accelerated, irrationally thinking he could somehow drive fast enough to break whatever was happening. You can't outrun it, Sarah said. We're almost there. This is where you'll pull over, scared and confused. This is where I'll get out. This is where I'll stand in the rain, waiting for the next driver. It happens every time, every year, exactly the same. Get out. Leon's voice shook. Get out of my truck right now. I can't, Leon. Not until mile marker 347. That's where the script ends. 346 flashed past. Leon's speedometer read 85, dangerous in the heavy rain. But he couldn't slow down. Sarah sat calmly beside him, hands folded in her lap. Do you want to know the worst part? I see the crash every time. I feel it, the impact, the glass, the moment everything goes dark. Then I'm back on the highway waiting, stuck forever on the road to a destination I'll never reach. Mile marker 347 appeared in his headlights. Leon's foot moved to the brake of its own accord, fighting his conscious desire to keep driving. The truck slowed, pulling toward the shoulder, responding to commands he wasn't giving. He tried to keep his foot on the accelerator, but his leg wouldn't obey. The truck stopped, exactly at mile marker 347. Leon tried to speak, but his throat had closed. Sarah opened the passenger door, turned back to him with a sad smile. Thank you for the ride, Leon. You're a good man, better than most. I'll see you next year. She stepped out into the rain and closed the door. Leon watched in his mirror as she walked to the side of the highway, stood motionless in the downpour, and waited. Her blue dress rippled in the wind. Then a car appeared, speeding, hydroplaning slightly. Leon saw it drift across the center line, saw it heading directly toward his stationary truck. He laid on his horn, flashed his lights, but the car kept coming. At the last second, the car swerved, missing him by inches. It spun out, came to rest on the opposite shoulder, hazard lights blinking. The driver got out, shaken but unhurt, and Leon realized with a jolt of horror that it was a young man, maybe 25, holding a cell phone and looking bewildered. Sarah was gone, just vanished from where she'd been standing. But Leon heard her voice one last time, whisper soft through his CB radio. He was supposed to be waiting in Dodge City. Now he's here, but I still can't reach him. The loop won't let me. It never lets me. Leon left Route 50 that night and never returned. He took a different route for his Kansas runs, adding 3 hours to his schedule. He didn't care. He marked April 15th in his calendar every year and made sure he was off the road entirely, parked somewhere with lights and people and normal, explicable reality. But sometimes, on rainy nights, when he's driving any dark highway, he sees her in his peripheral vision. The woman in the blue dress, standing in the rain, waiting for a ride to a place she died trying to reach 5 years ago. And he wonders how many other drivers have stopped, offered help, and found themselves part of a loop that replays endlessly on a forgotten stretch of Kansas highway. He wonders if any of them managed to break the cycle, He wonders if Sarah is still there, still waiting, still dying at mile marker 347. Most of all, he wonders who or what is really in control when his truck pulls over against his will, responding to rules he doesn't understand on roads that obey laws older and darker than any physics. Story fourth, the voice on Channel 19. Danny Ortiz monitored Channel 19 religiously during his overnight runs. The CB chatter kept him alert, connected him to the scattered community of night drivers. But on a September evening in 2018, heading south on I-35 through Oklahoma, he picked up a voice he couldn't explain. It started around 11:30 p.m. as Danny pushed his Kenworth through a stretch of highway between Oklahoma City and Norman. A woman's voice came through, clear and strong despite the static that usually plagued rural areas. Southbound at mile marker 118, please respond. Somebody talk to me, please. The desperation was palpable. Danny grabbed his mic. You got Big D here at marker 121. What's your 20 driver? Thank God. I'm at 118, but something's wrong. Everything's wrong. Can you see me? I can see your lights ahead. Danny checked his mirrors. Empty highway behind him. Negative driver. I don't see anyone. You southbound or northbound? Southbound. I'm right behind you. Maybe a quarter mile back. Please slow down, let me catch up. I don't want to be alone out here. Something in her voice made Danny uncomfortable, but he eased off the throttle anyway. He dropped from 70 to 60, watching his mirrors. No headlights appeared. The highway remained empty in both directions. I'm not seeing you, Danny said. What are you driving? Company name? Black Peterbilt, hauling furniture. Company is Nationwide Moving. But Danny, that's your name, right? Nothing looks right. The mile markers are going backward. I passed 118, then 119, then 120. That's not how numbers work. A chill crept up Danny's spine. He hadn't told her his name. How'd you know to call me Big D? You told me, just now. You said you got Big D here. I'm not crazy, I heard you. I'm asking how you knew my real name. I didn't say Danny. Silence on the channel. Then, I'm looking at your permit card. It says Daniel Ortiz, Phoenix, Arizona. It's right here on my dash where I can see it. Danny's blood went cold. His permit card was in a holder attached to his sun visor. There was no way she could see it unless she was inside his cab. He spun around, checking the sleeper berth. Empty. Lady, I don't know what game you're playing. No game. I'm scared. I've been driving for 3 hours, but I'm still in the same place. The same mile markers keep repeating, and now I can see inside your truck somehow. I can see your permits, your coffee cup, the air freshener shaped like a pine tree. How am I seeing these things? Danny's hands trembled on the wheel. Describe yourself. What do you look like? Brown hair tied back, green Nationwide Moving shirt, wedding ring on my left hand. There's a photo of my kids on the dash. 2 boys ages 6 and 8. Does that help? It helps, Danny lied. He was trying to figure out if this was an elaborate prank, maybe someone hacking CB frequencies with detailed information. But that didn't explain how she'd known his permit details. Danny, the highway is changing. The lanes are shifting. There were 2 lanes, now there are 3, now 4. They keep multiplying, but there are no other. Cars. Just you ahead of me, except I can't catch up. Why can't I catch up? Where did you start your run? What city? Kansas City. I left at 8 p.m. headed for Dallas, but my GPS stopped working around marker 125. The map shows me on I-35, but the landscape doesn't match. There are buildings here that shouldn't exist. I passed a town with lights, but when I tried to exit, the ramp looped back to the highway. I couldn't get off. Danny passed mile marker 115. He was definitely moving forward, covering ground. But if she was behind him at 118, she should have caught up by now, or at least gotten closer. Lady, what's your name? Rebecca. Rebecca Morrison. Listen, something else is happening. There are other trucks now. Dozens of them. They're parallel to me, on the lanes that shouldn't exist. All driving south, all the same speed. None of them have drivers. The cabs are empty. Rebecca, I think you should pull over. Get off the highway. Find a truck stop and... I tried. Every exit ramp loops back. I'm trapped on this road. And Danny, the other trucks are getting closer. They're merging toward my lane. If they keep moving, they'll crush me. Danny didn't know what to do. Call police? Report what? A woman claiming to be stuck in a dimensional highway with multiplying lanes. Give me your company's dispatch number. I'll call them. Get help sent to your location. Nationwide moving. 555-147. Hurry, please. The trucks are 10 feet away now. 5 feet. They're not stopping. Danny fumbled for his phone, started dialing. Rebecca's voice came through the CB, rising in panic. They're touching my truck. Metal scraping. Danny, I can't steer away. There's nowhere to go. Her voice cut off mid-sentence. The CB went silent, not even static. Danny completed the call to Nationwide Moving's dispatch. After identifying himself, he asked about Rebecca Morrison. The dispatcher's response chilled him. Sir, Rebecca Morrison was one of our drivers. Past tense, she died in an accident on I-35 in Oklahoma. 17 years ago, September 2001. Multi-vehicle pileup at mile marker 118. She was crushed between two other trucks when a third driver fell asleep and caused a chain collision. What is this about? Danny hung up without answering. He checked the date on his dashboard clock, September 22nd, 2018. 17 years. He did the math. September 22nd, 2001. Rebecca had died exactly 17 years ago to the day. He drove in silence for the next 20 miles, hands gripping the wheel too tight, eyes flicking constantly to his mirrors. The highway remained empty. No phantom trucks, no multiplying lanes, no desperate woman calling for help on Channel 19. At mile marker 118, Danny's CB suddenly crackled to life. Rebecca's voice, calm now, resigned. Danny, if you can hear this, thank you for trying. I'm here. I'm always here. Every September 22nd, I drive this route again. I experience the crash. Then it resets, and I'm back at mile marker 125, heading south, trapped on a road I can't escape. If you're listening next year, maybe don't respond. It's easier when I'm alone. Knowing someone can hear me but can't help just makes it worse. Rebecca, Danny grabbed his mic. Tell my boys I love them. They're 23 and 25 now, aren't they? Tell them their mom is still driving, still working, still doing the job. Tell them I'll see them when my run is finally complete. The CB went dead. Danny tried calling her back, switching channels, broadcasting on emergency frequencies. Nothing. He passed mile marker 118 and kept driving, putting distance between himself and whatever haunted that stretch of highway. Later that night, at a truck stop near Dallas, Danny looked up the accident report from September 22, 2001. 5 vehicles involved. Rebecca Morrison, 32, killed on impact. 2 of the other drivers survived. The third, the one who'd fallen asleep and caused the pileup, died at the scene. The report included witness statements. One of the surviving drivers mentioned something odd. Rebecca's CB had been transmitting during the accident. She'd been calling for help on Channel 19, describing what was happening in real time. But the transmission had continued for several minutes after the crash, after she was certainly dead. The witness remembered hearing her voice saying she was stuck, that the road kept looping, that she couldn't escape. The investigators had dismissed it as radio interference, delayed transmission, anything but what it really was. Danny never drove I-35 through Oklahoma on September 22nd again. He marked the date, scheduled around it, took vacation time if necessary. But he monitored Channel 19 every year on that date, no matter where he was. And every year, around 11:30 p.m. Central Time, he heard her. Always the same. Southbound at mile marker 118. Please respond. Somebody talk to me. Please. He never answered. He followed her final request, let her be alone on her eternal route. But he wondered about the other drivers who did respond, who didn't know the story, who tried to help. He wondered if they became part of her loop somehow, trapped on that highway between mile markers 125 and 118, driving forever toward a crash that already happened, reaching for an exit that would never come. Most of all, he wondered if consciousness could really be trapped in the moment of death, forced to relive trauma endlessly. And he thought about all the haunted stretches of highway across America, all the voices on CB radios calling out from accidents years past, all the drivers who never finished their routes but never stopped driving either. Story 5th, the inspection station. Victor Ramirez saw the flashing lights and the all-commercial vehicles must stop sign, and his stomach dropped. He'd been driving for Border Express for 12 years, and had never encountered a DOT inspection station on this stretch of Texas highway. Route 90 between Del Rio and Uvalde was mostly empty ranchland. There were no permanent inspection facilities here, but the lights were real, the building was real, and ignoring a DOT stop was a career-ending move. Victor pulled his Volvo onto the exit ramp, following signs to the inspection bay. The facility looked official, clean white building, proper signage, even the state of Texas logo on the doors, but something felt off. The parking lot was too empty, the lights too bright, the silence too complete. An officer stood by the scale house, clipboard in hand. He wore a proper DOT uniform, badge gleaming. Middle-aged, gray hair, forgettable face. "License and registration," he said as Victor rolled down his window. His voice was flat, inflectionless. Victor handed over the documents. The officer examined them without expression, then said, "Pull onto the scale, routine inspection." Victor complied, parking his rig on the massive weight platform. The digital display flickered, showing numbers that cycled too fast to read. The officer approached with his clipboard, circling the truck slowly. He didn't actually seem to be looking at anything specific, just walking in a mechanical pattern. "Open your trailer," the officer said. "I'm hauling electronics. Sealed load. The manifest shows." "Open the trailer." Same flat tone, no room for argument. Victor climbed down, unlocked the trailer door, swung it open. The trailer was empty. Completely, impossibly empty. He was supposed to be hauling 18 pallets of computer equipment from Laredo to San Antonio. He'd seen them loaded himself 6 hours ago. The cargo was worth nearly $300,000. "Where's my load?" Victor's voice came out strangled. The officer wrote on his clipboard, not looking up. "Step inside the building for processing. My cargo is gone. Someone stole. Step inside the building." Not a request, a command. Victor's legs moved of their own accord, carrying him toward the white building. He tried to stop, to turn back, but his body wouldn't obey. The officer followed, still writing on his clipboard in mechanical, repetitive motions. Inside, the building was wrong. It looked official from the outside, but the interior was a maze of identical hallways, all painted institutional white, lit by fluorescent lights that hummed at a frequency that made Victor's teeth ache. Doors lined both sides of each hallway, each door marked with a number. There was no reception area, no office space, just hallways and doors extending in every direction. "Room 147, the officer said. "You'll wait there for your inspection results. I want to speak to a supervisor. This is irregular. Room 147. The officer's face remained expressionless, but his eyes had gone completely black, like the eyes of a doll. No iris, no white, just solid black marbles. Victor ran. He bolted down the hallway, trying doors at random, all locked. He turned corners, searching for an exit, but every hallway looked identical. The fluorescent lights flickered in patterns that seemed almost like Morse code, spelling out words he couldn't quite decipher. Behind him, footsteps. The officer, walking at a steady, unhurried pace. "Room 147, his voice echoed. "Inspection is mandatory." Victor found a door that opened, room 147. He stumbled inside, slammed the door, locked it. The room was small, windowless, containing only a metal chair bolted to the floor, and a mirror on one wall. The kind of mirror that was obviously one-way glass, hiding observers on the other side. He sat in the chair, breathing hard, trying to process what was happening. Some kind of elaborate hijacking? Had criminals impersonating officers stolen his cargo? But that didn't explain the empty trailer, the impossible building, the officer's eyes. The mirror flickered. Instead of reflecting Victor, it showed his truck on the scale outside. But the truck was different. The cab was crushed, burned, clearly from some terrible accident. The trailer doors hung open, revealing a cargo area blackened by fire. Emergency vehicles surrounded it. Real police cars, real ambulances, real emergency personnel. Victor watched in horror as EMTs loaded a body bag into an ambulance. He could see the stretcher clearly, could see the sheet covering the remains, could see his own company ID badge clipped to the burned remnants of a shirt on the body beneath the sheet. The mirror changed, showing a different scene. A hospital room. His wife, Maria, sitting beside a bed. She was crying, holding someone's hand. Victor couldn't see who was in the bed from this angle, but he knew. Somehow, he knew it was him. The scene shifted again, a funeral. His mother and father, his 3 sisters, his children, all dressed in black, standing around a closed casket. The service was being held at St. Michael's, his family's church in Laredo. He could see the date on the memorial card someone held, 3 days from now. "No," Victor whispered, "I'm alive. I'm right here." The mirror went dark. Then it showed him his own reflection, but wrong. In the reflection, Victor was still sitting in the metal chair, but his skin was gray, his eyes sunken. Blood seeped from his scalp, from his ears, his arms bent at unnatural angles. The reflection was showing him as he really was, dead, broken, gone. The door opened. The officer stood there, clipboard still in hand. "Inspection complete. You failed to maintain control of your vehicle. Route 90, mile marker 57. You fell asleep at the wheel. Crossed the median, struck an oncoming pickup truck. The other driver survived. You did not. Your cargo was destroyed in the resulting fire." "I'm not dead," Victor said, but his voice sounded hollow. "This is the inspection station," the officer said. "All drivers come through here. Some realize quickly. Others take time. You've been here for 3 days, Victor. Your body is at Mueller Funeral Home. Your family is planning your service. But you're stuck here, in the moment between life and death, being processed." "No," Victor stood, tried to push past the officer. His hand passed through the man like smoke. "Let me out. I need to get back. I need to finish my route. You finished your route. This is the last stop. Room 147 is where drivers wait for final inspection results. You failed. But you'll be here, waiting, trying to understand, until you're ready to accept what happened." The officer dissolved like mist. Victor was alone in the room. He tried the door, locked from the outside. The mirror showed him the hospital again. Maria was saying goodbye to someone in the bed. Doctors were present, solemn-faced. They were removing life support. Victor screamed. He pounded on the door, kicked at it, threw his weight against it. The door was solid, immovable. He was trapped in room 147, in the inspection station that existed nowhere and everywhere, the place where drivers came when their last journey ended not at a destination but in twisted metal and flames. Hours passed, or days, or minutes. Time had no meaning in the white hallways. Victor tried the door periodically, always locked. The mirror showed him scattered images, his funeral, his widow cleaning out his closet, his truck being towed to a salvage yard. Other drivers appeared in the hallway sometimes, walking past room 147. They looked confused, lost, all heading toward their own numbered rooms. Victor tried to get their attention, but they couldn't hear him through the door. The officer returned occasionally, standing in Victor's doorway, reciting the same information. Route 90, mile marker 57, fell asleep, crossed median, collision, death. Then he'd disappear, leaving Victor alone with the mirror that showed him a world continuing without him. Victor doesn't know how long he's been in room 147. The fluorescent lights never change. The humming never stops. The mirror cycles through scenes of his life, his death, his aftermath. He sits in the metal chair and waits for an inspection result that will never come, for a release that requires him to accept what he cannot accept. Sometimes he hears his own voice on a CB radio, calling for help from mile marker 57, saying he can't stay awake, saying the highway is shifting. Sometimes he feels the impact, the crushing sensation, the fire. Sometimes he's back in his truck, approaching the inspection station lights, knowing he shouldn't stop but unable to prevent his hand from turning the wheel onto the exit ramp. This is the loop. This is the inspection station. This is where drivers who die on lonely highways come to be processed, to wait in numbered rooms while their bodies are buried, and their lives are settled, and their trucks are replaced. The facility exists in the space between life and death, staffed by officers with black eyes who write endlessly on clipboards, documenting failures that can never be corrected. And Victor sits in room 147, waiting for an inspection he'll never pass, on a route that ended at mile marker 57 3 days ago, or 3 years ago, or 3 decades. Time has no meaning here. Only the mirror, the locked door, and the slowly fading hope that this isn't real, that he'll wake up, that he'll finish his route and go home to Maria and his children. But deep down, in the part of himself he tries to ignore, Victor knows the truth. He's been inspected, he's been weighed, and he's been found wanting. The station never releases its drivers. It just keeps them in numbered rooms, forever waiting, forever trapped on the last road they'll ever travel. Story 6, The Cargo That Moved. Denise Parker specialized in refrigerated freight, temperature-sensitive cargo that required careful monitoring and strict schedules. In 14 years, she'd hauled everything from pharmaceuticals to flowers to frozen food. Nothing had ever bothered her until the sealed containers she picked up in Portland on an October night in 2022. The shipping order was vague. Biological samples, it read. Maintain 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Do not open containers. Deliver to research facility in Boise, Idaho. The pay was triple her normal rate, which should have been a red flag. Denise needed the money. She signed the paperwork and didn't ask questions. The loading crew was unusual. Men in full containment suits, handling 6 identical stainless steel containers with unusual care. Each container was about the size of a large ice chest, sealed with what looked like biometric locks. They placed them in the center of her refrigerated trailer, secured them with heavy straps, then backed out quickly without making eye contact. "Keep the temp steady," one of them said through his helmet. "Don't let it drop below 35 or rise above 37. And don't open the trailer door until you reach Boise." "What am I hauling?" Denise asked. "You don't want to know." He closed the trailer doors before she could respond. The first few hours were normal. Denise monitored her temperature gauge religiously, steady at 36 degrees. She made good time on I-84 heading east through the Columbia River Gorge. The highway was quiet, just occasional trucks and late-night travelers. Around 2 a.m., about 50 miles past Pendleton, Oregon, she heard a noise from the trailer. A thump, like something heavy shifting. Denise checked her mirrors instinctively, though she knew she couldn't see into the sealed trailer. The cargo was strapped down. It shouldn't be moving. 5 minutes later, another thump, then another. A rhythmic pattern, like something striking the inside of the trailer walls. Denise grabbed her phone, thinking she'd call the shipper. No signal. She was in a dead zone, miles from the nearest town. The thumping grew louder, more insistent. Now it sounded like multiple objects hitting the walls, sometimes in unison, sometimes in a chaotic percussion that made her skin crawl. She checked the temperature gauge, still 36 degrees. The refrigeration unit was functioning normally, but something inside her trailer was moving. Denise's training said never open a sealed trailer mid-route, especially refrigerated cargo. Temperature fluctuation could ruin product worth millions. But the impacts were getting violent now, the whole trailer rocking slightly with each hit. She pulled onto the shoulder, engine still running, and sat in the cab trying to decide what to do. The thumping stopped, complete silence. Denise waited, counting seconds, 30, 60, 90, nothing. Maybe the containers had just settled, shifted despite the straps. Maybe a scream, high-pitched, inhuman, coming from inside the trailer. Then another, and another. Multiple voices, if they could be called voices, shrieking in harmonized agony, or rage, or something Denise had no words for. The sound cut through the insulated walls, through the road noise, through her attempts at rational explanation. She grabbed the tire iron from her cab and approached the trailer doors. Her hands shook as she reached for the handle. Every instinct screamed that opening those doors was wrong, dangerous, possibly fatal. But she needed to see, needed to know what was making those sounds. The locking mechanism was cold under her fingers. She took a breath, yanked the handle, pulled the door open. The trailer interior looked normal at first. Refrigeration unit humming, temperature steady, 6 stainless steel containers strapped in the center, exactly as they'd been loaded. But the containers were different now. Frost covered their surfaces in intricate patterns that looked almost like writing. And they were vibrating, pulsing, as if something inside was trying to break free. One of the containers had a crack in its seal. A thin line of black liquid seeped out, dripping onto the trailer floor. The liquid didn't behave like normal fluid. It seemed to move upward against gravity, spreading across the container's surface, forming shapes that resembled grasping fingers. The screaming started again, but now Denise could pinpoint the source, the containers themselves. The sound wasn't coming from inside them. It was the metal screaming, vibrating at frequencies that shouldn't be possible, creating harmonics that bypassed her ears and went straight to her brainstem, triggering primal terror. She slammed the door shut and ran back to her cab. Her phone had signal now, 1 bar. She called the shipping company's emergency number. A recorded message: "The number you have dialed is not in service." Denise tried the delivery address in Boise. The phone rang endlessly. No answer, no voicemail. She looked up the research facility online. No results. The address on her shipping order led to an empty lot, according to Google Maps. The trailer rocked violently behind her. Denise made a decision. She'd drive to the nearest town, find police, let them deal with whatever was in those containers. She put the truck in gear and pulled back onto I-84. For the next 30 miles, the cargo continued its assault on the trailer walls. The entire rig shook with impacts. Denise could see other drivers giving her wide berth, perhaps sensing something wrong with her vehicle. The temperature gauge began to fluctuate wildly. 36 degrees, then 40, then 32, then 45. The refrigeration unit couldn't compensate for whatever was happening inside. The screaming evolved into something worse, words, twisted backwards, barely comprehensible, but definitely words. They spoke in English, or a corrupted version of it. Denise caught fragments through the cab walls. Let us out. Wrong place. Shouldn't be here. Take us back. Signs for La Grande, Oregon appeared. Denise had never been so grateful to see civilization. She'd find a truck stop, get help, wash her hands of this nightmare cargo. But as she took the exit ramp, her steering wheel locked. The truck continued straight, bypassing the exit, staying on I-84. She fought the wheel, pumped the brakes. Nothing. Her truck was moving on its own, maintaining speed, ignoring her inputs. The engine roared when she tried to shift to neutral. The doors wouldn't open when she pulled the handle. She was trapped in the cab, a passenger in her own vehicle. The cargo had taken control. For the next 2 hours, Denise could only watch as her truck drove itself east. It maintained proper speed, stayed in the right lane, even signaled for lane changes around slower vehicles. But she wasn't driving. Her hands rested uselessly on the locked steering wheel while invisible forces operated her rig. The temperature gauge settled at exactly 36 degrees and didn't waver again. The screaming stopped. The thumping ceased. An eerie silence filled the cab, broken only by the diesel engine and road noise. Denise tried her doors repeatedly. Locked, she tried calling for help. Her phone was dead, battery drained despite showing full charge minutes earlier. At the Idaho border, the truck took an exit she didn't recognize. Not the route to Boise, a smaller highway, then a county road, then a dirt path barely wide enough for the rig. They were in the mountains now, far from any town, any help. Denise's training included scenarios for hijacking, for robbery, even for terrorism. But not for this. Not for cargo that commandeered your truck and drove you into the wilderness. The path ended at a facility that didn't exist on any map. A concrete bunker built into the mountainside. Floodlights illuminating a loading dock. Men in containment suits waited, along with military. Vehicles, official but covert, the kind of operation that left no paper trail. Denise's doors unlocked with a click. A man approached, different from the Portland loading crew, but same type of suit. Same unwillingness to make eye contact. "You'll need to come with us for decontamination and debriefing," he said. "What you hauled is classified. What you saw is classified. What you heard never happened. What was in those containers?" Denise's voice was hoarse from 2 hours of suppressed screaming. "Nothing that should exist. Nothing that does exist, according to any record. You delivered samples we can't keep and can't destroy. Things we found that should have stayed buried. This facility is where we store the impossible." They led her to a decontamination chamber, sprayed her with chemicals that burned her skin, made her sign documents under threat of federal prosecution, paid her, not the triple rate but 10 times the normal fee, directly in cash. Then they drove her to a hotel in Boise, gave her a rental car, and told her that her truck was being serviced and would be returned in 72 hours. Denise never drove that truck again. When it was returned to her company, the refrigeration unit had been completely replaced, the trailer interior scrubbed so thoroughly it looked brand new. Her logs from that night were gone from the electronic system. The shipping order disappeared from her company's records. The research facility in Boise turned out to be a legitimate pharmaceutical company that had never ordered any delivery from Portland. But Denise still hears the screaming sometimes, late at night when she's alone. She still sees the black liquid defying gravity, forming shapes that reached for her. She still feels the steering wheel lock under her hands, the truck taking control, driving itself to a destination that officially doesn't exist. She quit refrigerated freight after that. Now she hauls dry goods, normal cargo, nothing sealed or temperature sensitive. But she wonders about all the other drivers who've hauled containers they couldn't identify, delivered them to facilities they couldn't find again, and were paid to forget what they saw. She wonders how many trucks on American highways are carrying things that shouldn't exist, that scream in frequencies that bypass hearing and go straight to the soul, that take control when they need to reach specific destinations. And she wonders what happens when those containers are opened by people without containment suits, without military backup, without protocols for dealing with the impossible. Most of all, she wonders if she really delivered the cargo that night, or if it delivered itself, using her truck and her route and her credentials to reach a place it needed to be. Because when she thinks back on that drive, she realizes she doesn't remember passing any other vehicles during those 2 hours the cargo controlled her rig. The highway was completely empty, as if it existed in a different dimension, a route that overlays our reality just enough to move things from one secret facility to another, using unwitting drivers as camouflage. Story 7th, the rest area time loop. Carl Thompson needed sleep desperately. He'd been driving for 19 hours straight, pushing through exhaustion to make his delivery deadline. When he saw the rest area sign on I-70 in Kansas just past Salina, he nearly wept with relief. 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, the place would be empty and quiet. He pulled his Freightliner into a parking spot at the far end of the lot, away from the restrooms and vending machines. The rest area was standard: picnic tables, concrete pavilion, information kiosk, scattered trees. One other truck sat at the opposite end, no lights on, driver presumably sleeping. Carl locked his doors, set his phone alarm for 4 hours and closed his eyes. He woke to daylight, which was wrong. His alarm hadn't gone off. Carl checked his phone, 3:42 a.m., but the sun was up, bright morning light streaming through his windshield. He looked around, confused. The rest area looked identical to when he'd arrived, but now multiple trucks filled the parking spaces, all with their engines off. Carl climbed out of his cab, trying to shake off the disorientation. The information kiosk caught his attention. The date display read Tuesday, July 17th. That was correct, today's date, but the time showed 9:30 a.m. His phone insisted it was 3:42 a.m., which was right. A man approached from the restroom building, another driver, mid-40s, looking haggard. "You just got here?" the man asked. "Yeah, I pulled in at 3 this morning, but something's wrong with the time. It's always 3 a.m. here." The man's voice was flat, resigned. "Your phone will never show anything else, but the sun comes up, the sun goes down, days pass. We just can't leave." "What are you talking about?" "I'm Ray Decker. I pulled in here 6 days ago, or 6 years ago, or 6 minutes ago. I can't tell anymore. Time works differently in this place. You can't leave. None of us can." Carl laughed, a nervous sound. "That's ridiculous. I'm leaving right now. Go ahead, try." Carl walked back to his truck, started the engine. Everything functioned normally. He put it in gear, headed for the exit. The rest area had a straightforward layout, one entrance-exit ramp connecting to I-70. Carl drove toward it, following the painted lines. The ramp curved around trees, headed toward the highway, and deposited him back in the rest area parking lot. Same spot where he'd started. He tried again, taking the ramp more slowly, watching carefully. The ramp curved. He could see I-70 ahead, could see other vehicles passing on the highway, but somehow, without any sharp turn or obvious transition, he ended up back in the same parking spot. He tried 5 more times. Same result. It was like the rest area existed in a loop, the exit ramp feeding back to the entrance no matter which direction he drove. Carl's hands shook as he parked and shut off the engine. Ray stood by Carl's door when he climbed out. "Told you, none of us can leave. There are 17 drivers here now, or there were yesterday. Some of them change, disappear, get replaced by new arrivals. We think the rest area is collecting drivers, but we don't know why. This is impossible. It's some kind of optical illusion, or I'm dreaming. You'll stop thinking that around day 3. Come meet the others. Ray led Carl to the pavilion, where other drivers sat at picnic tables, looking dazed or resigned or angry. Ray introduced them: Susan, Tom, Billy, Jennifer, Marcus, others. They'd all pulled in for rest stops. All found themselves unable to leave. Their phones all showed different times, but always the hour they'd first arrived. The sun rose and set normally, but clocks never advanced. "We've tried everything," Susan said. She was a woman in her 50s, hauling for J.B. Hunt. Called police, no signal. Tried to walk out on foot, the road loops back. Even tried driving through the trees. The truck just appears back in the parking lot like we teleported. "Food and water appear in the vending machines," Tom added. "Never runs out. We don't get hungry as often as we should. Sleep happens, but time doesn't pass normally during it. It's like this place exists outside regular time." Carl spent the next several hours, though his phone still claimed it was 3:42 a.m., experimenting with the boundaries. He tried walking in straight lines away from the rest area. After about 200 yards, he'd somehow end up walking back toward the pavilion, as if space itself curved around the area. He tried marking his path, but the marks would disappear when he tried to retrace his steps. The other drivers shared their theories during meals that appeared like magic in the vending machines. Food they never paid for, that never ran out, always fresh. Some thought they'd died in accidents and this was purgatory. Others believed it was a government experiment, some kind of time dilation field. Marcus insisted they'd driven into a pocket dimension, a bubble universe that trapped travelers. On what Carl's phone stubbornly called day 3 of staying in the eternal 3:42 a.m., a new driver arrived. The man pulled into the rest area, parked, got out looking tired. Carl and the others rushed over to warn him, but by the time they reached his truck, he was gone. The truck sat empty, driver's seat still warm, keys in the ignition, but no sign of the driver. "That's been happening more often," Ray said quietly. "We call them vanishings. Sometimes new drivers appear and immediately disappear. Sometimes one of us will be here, then suddenly gone. No pattern we can identify. We think the rest area is selective, keeping some of us, rejecting others." "Rejecting where?" Carl asked. "They go back to the real world?" "We don't know. Maybe, or maybe somewhere worse." That night, though Carl's phone showed 3:42 a.m. in perpetual frozen time, he noticed something odd about the information kiosk. The date had changed, no longer July 17th. Now it showed July 19th. 2 days had passed in the outside world, but his phone remained locked at the moment he'd first parked. The kiosk also displayed news headlines, updating regularly despite the frozen clocks. Carl read them obsessively, watching the world continue without him. His delivery had been missed, declared abandoned. His company had reported him missing. Search parties had checked this rest area and found no trace of him or his truck. "We're out of phase," Marcus explained, "existing parallel to normal time. People can pass through this rest area without seeing us. We see their vehicles sometimes, flickering in and out like ghosts, but they can't see us." Carl tested this theory the next day, or what felt like the next day. He stood by the entrance ramp. Normal vehicles would pull in, park. Drivers would use restrooms and vending machines, then leave. But they moved strangely, jerky and fast, like time-lapse photography. And they never seemed to notice the 17 trucks parked in the lot, never saw Carl waving his arms desperately for attention. One driver did notice him, a woman in a passenger vehicle, middle-aged. She locked eyes with Carl and screamed, pointed at him, backing away. Then she ran to her car and sped out of the rest area. Carl felt hope spike. She'd seen him, But within seconds, the same woman pulled into the rest area again, parked in the same spot, went through the same routine. A loop. She was caught in her own repetition, forever seeing Carl, forever running away, forever returning to see him again. "Don't interact with the phased people," Ray warned. "You'll trap them in subloops. That woman will repeat her 10-minute cycle forever now, unless the rest area releases her. We've learned to avoid them." Weeks passed in the outside world, tracked by the kiosk's changing date. Carl's phone remained frozen at 3:42 a.m. His beard grew, his body aged. But the rest area stayed the same. Always the same picnic tables, same trees, same parking lot. Food appeared in vending machines. Sleep happened, but brought no rest. The 17 drivers existed in a timeless bubble, watching the world move forward without them. Some drivers went insane. Billy started walking in circles, muttering about his family, convinced that if he walked the exact right path, he'd break through. Susan stopped talking, just sat at a picnic table staring at nothing. Tom tried to crash his truck through the boundary, accelerating to full speed and aiming for the tree line. The truck appeared back in its parking spot, undamaged. Tom still in the driver's seat, but now catatonic. Carl found himself accepting the situation with disturbing ease, day after day, or the eternal 3:42 a.m. depending on perspective, blurred together. He stopped trying to escape, stopped checking the news on the kiosk, just existed, eating when the impulse struck, sleeping when tiredness came, sitting with Ray and Marcus and the others who remained lucid. Then, on what the kiosk claimed was October 9th, but what Carl's phone still said was July 17th at 3:42 a.m., Ray vanished. Not disappeared suddenly, faded. Carl watched it happen. Ray was sitting at a picnic table talking about his kids and slowly became translucent. His voice grew distant, echoing as if from far away. Then he was gone, and none of the other drivers remembered him except Carl. "It's taking us one by one," Marcus said, "absorbing us. We fade when we forget why we wanted to leave, when we accept this place as reality." Ray stopped fighting, so the rest area took him. Carl felt terror pierce his resignation. He started making plans to escape again, detailed schemes to break the loop, but the efforts felt hollow. His desperation was manufactured, going through motions his heart didn't believe in. He was forgetting what his life had been like before, forgetting his reasons for leaving. More drivers faded. Susan, Billy, Tom, Jennifer. The parking lot emptied. Soon only Carl and Marcus remained. They sat at the picnic table, two men trapped in eternal early morning, watching the kiosk date advance through seasons they couldn't feel. Marcus talked about time dilation theories, about quantum bubbles, about parallel dimensions. Carl listened, but understood none of it. One morning, and Carl didn't know which day the kiosk showed, had stopped checking, Marcus faded. He fought it, screaming that he wouldn't forget, that he had to get home to his daughter. But the rest area was patient. It waited until his resistance weakened, until acceptance crept in. Then it took him, absorbed him, left Carl alone in the parking lot. Carl sat at the picnic table staring at his phone. 3:42 a.m., July 17th. He tried to remember what he'd been doing before he pulled into this rest area, driving somewhere, delivering something. He had a life, a purpose, people waiting for him. But the details were slipping away, fading like morning fog. He understood now. The rest area didn't trap travelers. It offered them peace, release from the endless highway, from the pressure of deadlines and schedules, and the grinding exhaustion of the road. It was purgatory, yes, but a comfortable one. Eternal rest at a rest area. The perfect irony. Carl stood up, walked to his truck. He could try to leave again, could start the engine, head for the exit, experience the loop one more time, or he could sit back down, accept the peace being offered. Stop fighting what couldn't be changed. His hand touched the truck's door handle. He pulled it open, sat in the driver's seat, looked at his phone one last time. 3:42 a.m. The sun was rising again, the eternal morning of a day that would never arrive. Carl closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was back at the picnic table. His truck sat in the parking lot, engine off, doors locked. He didn't remember walking back from it. The kiosk date showed December 3rd. Months had passed in the outside world. His phone showed 3:42 a.m. Carl wasn't afraid anymore. The rest area was home now. He'd stopped being a driver and become something else. A permanent resident of a place between places, a man existing in the gap between departure and arrival. And that was okay. The road had taken so much from him over the years. Maybe he'd earned this rest. As he sat there accepting his fate, a new truck pulled into the parking lot. The driver got out, looked confused. Carl approached, ready to explain, ready to welcome another traveler to the rest area that never lets you leave, ready to watch them fight, fade, and eventually join him in the eternal morning of a Tuesday in July that would last forever. Story 8th, the Black Ribbon Highway. Rita Alvarez first heard about the Black Ribbon Highway from another driver at a truck stop in Missouri. Old-timer named Chuck. He'd been hauling freight for 40 years and had stories that sounded like campfire tales. But Chuck wasn't laughing when he told Rita about the road. "Stay off Highway 666, he said, hunched over his coffee. "I know it got renumbered to 491 back in 2003. But the road remembers what it was. And on certain nights, if you're unlucky, you'll find yourself on the real 666, the one that exists underneath the regular highway. The Black Ribbon." Rita had laughed it off. Superstitious nonsense. Highway 666 had been called Devil's Highway for decades, blamed for high accident rates and strange occurrences. The renumbering was supposed to end the curse. But Chuck's eyes held something Rita couldn't dismiss. Genuine fear. "How do you know if you're on it?" she'd asked, half mocking. "The asphalt turns pure black, like fresh tar but dry. No lane markings, no mile markers. And you'll see other vehicles, but they won't be from your time. You'll know it when it happens, Rita. And when it does, keep driving forward. Never stop, never turn around. You stop, and the road keeps you forever." That was 3 months ago. Rita had forgotten about it, dismissed Chuck as a drunk old-timer telling stories. Until tonight, November 1st, 2019, driving her Peterbilt through New Mexico on what her GPS claimed was Highway 491. At 11:47 p.m., the road changed. One moment, normal asphalt with yellow dividing lines and white edge markers. The next moment, the surface was different. Black like obsidian, smooth and featureless, no markings, no reflectors, just pure black stretching ahead in her headlights. The GPS fritzed, screen flickering, then showing a route labeled simply 666. Rita's heart hammered. She told herself it was a hallucination, exhaustion playing tricks. But her tires sounded different on this surface. A whisper-quiet sound that was wrong for asphalt. And the sky had changed. No moon, no stars, just absolute blackness above. Then she saw the other vehicles. A car passed her going the opposite direction, a 1950s Chevrolet, pristine condition, the driver visible for a split second. He wore period clothing, glasses reflecting her headlights, face locked in an expression of terror. Then he was gone, swallowed by darkness. More vehicles appeared. A truck from the 1970s, a Model T Ford, a futuristic vehicle that looked like nothing Rita had seen before. all traveling both directions on the black ribbon, all with drivers who stared straight ahead with that same terrified expression. None of them acknowledged her. They passed like ghosts, there and gone. Rita's speedometer showed 75, but she felt no sense of motion. The black road beneath her wheels seemed to move differently than normal asphalt, as if she were driving on something alive. Her headlights penetrated about 50 yards, then the darkness consumed everything. Behind her, the road disappeared immediately, no trace of where she'd been. She tried to slow down, ease off the throttle. Her truck maintained speed. She pressed the brake. Nothing. The Peterbilt rolled forward at a steady 75 miles per hour, refusing her commands. Rita was a passenger in her own vehicle again, trapped on the black ribbon, committed to a journey she hadn't chosen. A sign appeared. Weathered and wrong. Welcome to Highway 666, the Devil's Highway. Speed limit 66. The numbers seemed to shimmer and change. 66, 666, infinity. The sign vanished behind her before she could process it fully. More vehicles appeared, and Rita realized they weren't just from different time periods. Some were from different realities entirely. She saw vehicles that physics shouldn't allow, trucks that hovered 6 inches above the road, cars with too many wheels, a massive rig that seemed to exist in multiple spaces simultaneously, cab and trailer phasing in and out of visibility. The drivers in these impossible vehicles all shared that same expression, terror mixed with resignation. They'd been driving this road for a long time, Rita realized, maybe forever. The black ribbon didn't just connect places, it connected times, realities, dimensions. And once you were on it, you kept driving until you became another ghost vehicle for future travelers to pass. Rita grabbed her CB radio. Anyone on Highway 666, come back. This is Rita on the black ribbon. Somebody talk to me. The response was immediate, dozens of voices overlapping. Can't stop. Been driving since 1952. Where does it end? My family thinks I'm dead. The road won't let me go. Help me, please help me. The cacophony of desperate pleas from drivers spanning decades, all trapped on the same impossible highway. One voice cut through the chaos, calm and clear, first-timer. Listen carefully. The road will test you. You'll see exits, rest areas, opportunities to stop. Don't take them. They're traps. You stop, you become permanent. Keep driving until sunrise. The black ribbon only exists at night. How long until sunrise? Rita asked. Depends where you entered. Time works differently here. Could be minutes, could be years. Just drive. Years. Rita felt her sanity start to slip. She couldn't drive for years. She'd run out of fuel. Her body would give out. The fuel gauge caught her eye. Full. It had been at 3/4 when the road changed. Now it showed completely full, the needle pressed against the maximum mark. And her body felt different. Not tired anymore, not hungry or thirsty. The biological needs that dictated a driver's schedule were gone, suspended by whatever physics governed the black ribbon. An exit sign appeared. Rest area next right. 1 mile. Rita's hands moved toward the steering wheel, ready to turn. The anonymous voice crackled through the CB. Don't. That exit leads nowhere. Just an empty parking lot where you'll sit until the road absorbs you. I watched my friend take that exit in 1987. His truck is still there. Driver turned to dust in the seat. Rita forced her hands back to her lap. The exit approached, and despite her intention to stay on the highway, her truck began to drift right toward the off-ramp. The black ribbon was pulling her, testing her will. She grabbed the steering wheel, fought to stay straight. The truck resisted, turning harder right. She screamed at it, at the road, at whatever malevolent intelligence controlled this place. put all her strength into holding the wheel straight. Her truck shuddered, seemed to fight itself, then snapped back to the center of the highway. The exit flashed past. In her mirror, Rita glimpsed the rest area. Dozens of trucks parked in neat rows, all coated in decades of dust. Drivers visible as skeletal remains in the cabs. "Good," the voice said. "You're stronger than most, but the tests get harder." They did. Over the next stretch, Rita had no idea if it was miles or hours or something else entirely. The black ribbon presented constant temptations. Exit signs promising food, fuel, phones to call home. Gas stations that looked modern and clean, offering relief from the endless driving. Even other drivers, standing at the roadside, flagging her down, begging for help. Each time Rita resisted, kept her foot off the pedals. They didn't work anyway, and her hands loose on the wheel, ready to fight if the truck tried to turn. The other vehicles passing her thinned out. Fewer ghosts from different times, more empty road. She wondered if she was being phased out of the shared hallucination, sinking deeper into the black ribbon's heart. Then the landscape began to change. The absolute darkness gave way to dim shapes, structures alongside the road that didn't conform to normal geometry, buildings that were too tall, too thin, bending in ways that hurt to look at. Forests of trees that moved, reaching toward the highway with branch arms that barely missed her truck. Mountains in the distance that flickered between different shapes, never settling on one form. This was the deep black ribbon, Rita understood. Not just a cursed highway, but a road that ran through spaces between realities, connecting points that shouldn't be connected. And the drivers who came here, by accident or some darker purpose, were fuel for the road, keeping it alive, feeding it with their trapped consciousness. "Almost there," the CB voice said. "You're in the deep section. Not many make it this far. The sunrise is close. You'll feel it before you see it." Rita did feel it. A change in the air, a lightening of the oppressive darkness. The black road beneath her wheels began to show cracks. Normal gray asphalt visible through the perfect black surface. Lane markings flickered into existence, disappeared, returned. Mile markers appeared briefly, then vanished. The other vehicles became less strange. Now she passed normal trucks, normal cars, still from different time periods, but conforming to physics she recognized. The driver's expressions changed from terror to confusion to relief. They were escaping too, surfacing from the deep black ribbon back toward reality. Rita's speedometer began to respond to her inputs. She could feel the truck again, the familiar vibration of diesel engine and road surface. Her fuel gauge dropped from full to 3/4, exactly where it had been when the road changed. The GPS stopped showing 666 and returned to Highway 491, displaying her correct location in New Mexico. The black surface cracked completely, revealing normal highway underneath. Stars appeared in the sky above. The horizon showed the first hint of dawn, a gray line that grew brighter as Rita watched. She'd made it through the night. The black ribbon was releasing her. At 5:43 a.m., full daylight, Rita pulled into a truck stop in Gallup. She was shaking, soaked in sweat despite the cool morning. Other drivers were there looking normal, going about their routines. Rita approached an older man, asked if he'd been on Highway 491 last night. He said yes, uneventful drive. Why? Did you see anything strange? Black road, old vehicles, anything unusual? Just a normal night, lady. You feeling okay? Rita didn't ask anyone else. She filed the experience in the part of her mind reserved for things she couldn't explain and couldn't forget. She kept driving, kept hauling freight, but she avoided Highway 491 entirely. She took routes that added hours to her trips rather than risk that stretch of New Mexico road. But sometimes, late at night on any highway, Rita sees her road turn pure black for just a second. Sees a glimpse of vehicles from other times passing in the opposite direction. Feels her truck try to maintain speed when she attempts to brake. Those moments last only seconds before reality reasserts itself, but they're reminders that the black ribbon is always there, always waiting beneath the normal highways. And Rita wonders about the voice on the CB, the calm driver who'd guided her through. She never heard from him again despite monitoring the radio. She wonders if he escaped too, or if he's still out there, permanently trapped on the black ribbon, helping new drivers survive while he himself drives endlessly through the night that never ends. Most of all, she thinks about the drivers who failed the tests, who took the exit ramps, or stopped at the ghost rest areas. She thinks about their trucks sitting in impossible parking lots, their remains aging in cabs while the black ribbon keeps their consciousness trapped, driving forever on roads between realities. Fuel for a highway that shouldn't exist but does, waiting for November nights when the barrier between worlds grows thin and Highway 666 remembers its true name. Story 9th, The Last Mile. Frank Delgado had one rule that kept him alive through 26 years of trucking: trust your instincts. When something felt wrong, it was wrong. So when his dispatch called at 6 p.m. on a Friday night asking him to take an emergency run, every instinct Frank had screamed to decline. "It's just 60 miles, the dispatcher said. "Bakersfield to a warehouse outside Tehachapi. They'll pay triple rate, cash on delivery. Something about a server failure. Need these computer parts tonight, or they lose millions. You're the closest driver, triple rate." Frank thought about his daughter's college tuition, about the medical bills from his wife's surgery. He ignored his instincts and accepted the run. The loading took 20 minutes, 6 pallets of computer equipment properly secured, nothing unusual except the warehouse workers' hurry. They closed his trailer doors like they were sealing something dangerous. "Straight shot on Highway 58, one of them said. "No stops, deliver before midnight." Frank pulled out at 7:15 p.m. Highway 58 from Bakersfield to Tehachapi was a route he knew well, a steady climb through the Tehachapi Pass, rural and dark, but straightforward. 60 miles should take about 90 minutes. He'd make the midnight deadline easily. The first 40 miles were normal. Traffic thinned as he left Bakersfield, the highway winding into mountain terrain. Streetlights gave way to darkness. Frank settled into the rhythm of the drive, confident he'd made the right decision despite his initial unease. At mile marker 147, his truck's computer display flickered. The odometer showed a strange reading, 20 miles remaining. Frank did the math. Destination was at about mile marker 167. He was at 147. That was 20 miles remaining. The truck's computer was correct, but something about seeing it displayed felt ominous. At mile marker 148, the display updated, 19 miles remaining. Then 149 came into view, and the display showed 18 miles remaining. Frank watched it count down with each mile marker. His unease returned stronger now. Why was his truck tracking remaining distance? That wasn't a standard feature. He'd been driving this Freightliner for 3 years and had never seen this display. At mile marker 157, the display showed 10 miles remaining, and Frank noticed other changes. The highway looked different. Still 2 lanes, still winding through dark terrain, but the asphalt seemed newer, the lane markings brighter, and there were no other vehicles. He hadn't seen another car, truck, or any sign of civilization since mile marker 145. At mile marker 161, 6 miles remaining, his phone lost signal. Then his CB radio filled with static. Then his truck's AM/FM radio cut to dead air on every station. He was isolated now, alone on a highway that felt increasingly wrong with each passing mile. At mile marker 163, 4 miles remaining, Frank saw the first sign, warning, final approach. No stopping, no turning back. The sign was official looking, the kind Caltrans would install. But the message was bizarre. Final approach to what? And why couldn't he turn back? Frank tested that claim. He slowed down, thinking he'd do a U-turn, head back to Bakersfield, call his dispatcher and report equipment failure. But when he tried to turn the wheel, it locked. His foot moved to the brake pedal. Nothing. The truck maintained its speed, rolling forward at a steady 55 miles per hour, ignoring his inputs. At mile marker 164, 3 miles remaining, the landscape disappeared. The mountainous terrain that had surrounded the highway was gone, replaced by absolute blackness. His headlights illuminated the road ahead, but everything beyond the pavement was void. No trees, no rocks, no sky. Just darkness that seemed to absorb light. At mile marker 165, 2 miles remaining, Frank saw the warehouse. It appeared in the distance, illuminated by floodlights that seemed too bright, too white. The building was massive, far larger than necessary for a simple equipment delivery. It had no windows, no visible doors except for one large loading dock. The structure looked like a concrete bunker designed to withstand apocalypse. At mile marker 166, 1 mile remaining, Frank realized he was crying. Terror had broken through his professional calm. Everything about this situation was wrong. The isolated highway, the controlled vehicle, the impossible warehouse. He was driving towards something. That wasn't what his dispatcher had described, wasn't what the shipping order claimed. The display updated, 0.5 miles remaining, then 0.25 miles remaining. The warehouse grew larger, the loading dock visible now. A metal door was rolling open, revealing darkness inside that was even more absolute than the void surrounding the highway. Frank's truck was being pulled toward that opening like metal to magnet. 0.1 miles remaining. Frank could see figures at the loading dock, men in the same containment suits he'd seen in horror movies, standing ready to receive his cargo. But they weren't moving like normal humans. Their motions were too synchronized, too mechanical, identical. 0.05 miles remaining. Frank grabbed the door handle, thinking he'd jump from the cab, escape before the truck entered the warehouse. The handle wouldn't move. The door was sealed, locked by some mechanism he couldn't override. He was trapped. 0.01 miles remaining. Frank's display showed a final message, delivery complete, thank you for your service. But he hadn't stopped yet, hadn't transferred the cargo. How could delivery be complete? Then he understood. The cargo wasn't computer equipment. He was the cargo. The truck, the driver, the whole package. Whatever that warehouse contained needed trucks, needed drivers, needed sacrifices to feed operations that couldn't exist in the normal world. The 60-mile route was a one-way conveyor belt delivering resources to a facility that existed outside regular space. The truck rolled into the warehouse. Darkness swallowed him. Frank felt the trailer disconnect, lifted by machinery he couldn't see, heard his cab being moved, positioned, stored. The engine shut off despite him not touching the controls. The lights died. In the absolute darkness, Frank heard voices, other drivers, dozens of them, calling out from wherever they'd been stored. How long have I been here? Someone let me out. My family doesn't know where I am. I just wanted to. Finish the run. Frank added his voice to the chorus, screaming for help that wouldn't come. His truck had become his tomb, stored in a warehouse that collected drivers who'd accepted wrong deliveries, who'd ignored their instincts, who'd been willing to take emergency runs to impossible destinations for triple pay. Time passed. Hours, days, weeks. Frank couldn't tell. His biological needs faded. He didn't get hungry or thirsty, didn't need to sleep. just existed in darkness, consciousness trapped in his cab, aware but unable to act. Sometimes he heard machinery moving, new trucks being delivered, new drivers joining the collection. Sometimes the darkness would lift slightly, and he'd glimpse rows of trucks stretching into infinity, all occupied, all trapped. And Frank understood the final horror. He wasn't dead. Death would have been mercy. He was preserved, suspended, part of the warehouse's inventory. Whatever operated this facility, government, corporation, something else, needed to keep drivers alive, aware, suffering. Needed the conscious energy of trapped souls to power operations that violated every natural law. His truck's display would occasionally flicker to life, showing the same message, delivery complete, thank you for your service. And Frank would scream at it, pound on the locked doors, beg for release. But the warehouse never let drivers go. They were permanent inventory, filed away in the darkness, one more resource in a catalog of the impossible. Sometimes Frank heard his own voice on a CB radio, calling out from Highway 58, "Stay away from mile marker 147. Don't accept emergency runs to Tehachapi. Turn back while you can. They're collecting us. They're building something with our suffering. Please, please don't make the same mistake I did." But drivers kept coming. Frank would hear their trucks rolling into storage, hear their voices join the chorus of the trapped. The warehouse was insatiable, always needing more, always extending that final 60-mile route to new victims who thought they were taking easy money for a simple delivery. And in his eternal darkness, trapped forever in the cab of a freightliner that would never move again, Frank Delgado served as a monument to ignored instincts, a warning that some routes don't end at destinations, but at collection points for operations that exist in the spaces between mapped reality. The last mile of Highway 58 wasn't a mile at all. It was a door that only opened one way, leading to a warehouse where trucks and drivers became fuel for machines that ran on captured consciousness, on the suffering of those who'd been willing to trust a dispatcher over their own screaming intuition. His daughter never knew what happened. His wife never learned where he'd gone. The official story said Frank abandoned his truck near Tehachapi, walked away from his life, disappeared. But Frank was closer than they knew, just 60 miles and one dimension away, stored in a facility that doesn't appear on maps, forever trapped in the last mile that never ends.